right, once again, welcome everyone. This is Impact Masters Podcast in collaboration with the Todd Podcast from Africa's Talking, in collaboration with Founders Launch, bringing you this conversation. Founders Launch is an organization that brings together entrepreneurs in the ecosystem, helping them network and also make collaboration really big. Today, we are honored to have two guests. One of them will actually be hosting these podcasts, having good conversation that will entail more so in terms of what it takes to be an entrepreneur and scale businesses, among other things. I hope I'm allowed to ask questions here and there, but I'm not the main host today. I want to welcome our main two guests in these podcasts. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, hello. So my name is Jonathan Ntegelu, and I'm the principal at Benue Capital. So Benue Capital is an early stage VC firm here in Uganda, in Kampala, Uganda. And we do early stage investments. So we take pride in being the first check that founders receive. And we launched in 2023. So we're just celebrating our first year in the market. And we are happy to partner with Africa's Talking, with Founders Lounge for this special edition of the Founders Lounge meetup. And so I'm hosting Ken Morris. Ken Morris is the CEO of Codify. Codify is located in Silicon Valley. But I'm a firm believer in allowing people to blow their own trumpet. So I'm going to ask Ken to do exactly that.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks for having me here. Very, very happy and excited to be in Africa for the first time in my life. In Uganda, and in Uganda for the third day. Thanks for coming over and spending this time with us. My name is Ken. I am the founder CEO of Codify. Codify is a software development company. We are the trusted partner for many software companies, including a large number of startups. We established ourselves in 2014 in Silicon Valley, in Sunnyvale, California. And for the first 5 or 6 years, we were purely an onshore company. We were doing services on site. But as more and more startups required us to go offshore, we had a partner company doing our work offshore. And then in 2022, 2 years back, we acquired a company in India, and that has become an offshore development center for our services. We currently have about 70 developers in India, and we work with a number of startups. And at any given point in time, we have about 8 or 9, or sometimes 10 or 12 projects. That's, and I'm very happy to be here once again.
Yeah. So I know a big percentage of the people here are either developers or startup founders. And one of the key components of building a startup is you get an idea. You have this brilliant idea that you think is going to change the world, probably change the world. So what you do is you set out to build an MVP. So MVP, minimum viable product. You want to build the least amount of software that you can build, or the least with the key features that you need to be able to test your idea in the market. Now, a lot of startup founders here and have found a challenge when it comes to building an MVP. I was having a conversation with Ken prior to this, and he told me at Codify, they built an MVP in 6 weeks. Now, a lot of founders here and a lot of developers here can attest that sometimes we build MVPs for even 4 months and 6 months, only to put it in the market and realize it's not going to work. People don't like it. It can't do anything. And then you have to build again for 6 months. Before you know it, that's 1 year already gone. So the purpose of this conversation is I want us to talk about building an MVP. What are the key differences between building an MVP in Silicon Valley and ecosystems like ours that are very young? And what are some of the things that we need to do when you're building an MVP? And I would like to kick off this conversation by asking Ken, Because Ken builds MVPs in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley. So I'd like to ask him about the key components of a successful MVP in Silicon Valley, just to kick off our conversation.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I think just a slight difference. I mean, we don't build in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
We design probably in Silicon Valley, and the whole work is done offshore in India. So I think the main components of a minimum viable product is that is right there in the words itself. It should be minimum. It should be viable, right? So what does minimum mean? Minimum means it should have just the core features and functionalities. We are not trying to build the whole product. So just select the core, very, very essential features and functionalities that you want to build up, and that is the point number one. The point number two is that this should always be built taking into consideration user feedback. If user feedback is not brought into this, then it will be normally what we call as a thought product, because the founder will have it in his mind that his product should do all these things. So it is in his mind. He has not talked to any customer or client or future client. The third factor is the scalability factor of it, which if you are a startup person, you know that we are not building it just for the MVP. We are building it to scale it up once it gets approvals. The other factor and the most important factor, I think, is the market fit. Is this product really required in the market? If you are building a product that is not required by anybody, then maybe there will be a buyer of one because the founder himself may have to buy the product. And the fourth and the last point, but not least, there's many other factors. But I think one other point is that when we build an MVP, we are not building an MVP to actually stop at that MVP point. But we will there can be two or three results. One is that you might actually get a lot of approval from your clients, and they say that's a great product. So you'll start building the other features of the product. You may actually get a response from the client saying that I don't like features 1 to 9, but I like maybe 10, which means that the product is doesn't really work, and which also reaches to a point where you may have to tweak the product, or you have to pivot or build something else. So in my view, these are the 4 or 5 major factors involved in as a key factors of an MVP.
Yeah. So my actual next question that I had already prepared was how important is user feedback when building an MVP? But I think we can agree that you've talked about it, and you've said if you're building an MVP without user feedback, then you're probably building for yourself. So I'd like us to maybe shift to another question, and I just want to ask, since you're building an MVP and you're building something that you can build very fast, push it out into the market and test it, what is the relevant software that you think is best placed to be able to achieve a successful MVP?
I don't know the answer for that question, because you can't have a standard software for every kind of a product. But we normally these days we use let me say in different words. So if you don't know, if you as a founder yourself doesn't know what the product is going to, whether the product will be accepted or whether the product is really going to take off, you're at that early stage where you think that, okay, this could be a good idea, but I don't know. So in those cases, actually, what we would strongly recommend is to go with a low-code software, low-code, no-code software. There are many of that in the market. I don't want to name any names, but that is probably the best way to do it, because you spend very little money, and if by some chance your idea is not going to work out, then you can always say, okay, I've spent this money, that's okay. Now I'll build something else in that. But if it is something that you are fairly clear as to that is what you want. These days, the most popular softwares are React and React Native, and those kind of stacks is what is normally used. And then you have PHP and Laravel and all those kind of things that have come up at Save. So there's no hard and fast thing that we can actually name for this.
Yeah.
I hope I answered the question. Was that the question or was it something else?
Yeah, I think maybe would but I think developers are familiar with the no-code tools. So for me, I just wanted to understand, instead of actually coding the MVP, what is like the fastest way to ship it?
So you mean after coding it?
No, I mean the fastest way to build the MVP.
Right.
Yeah. I would say because in Uganda, when you go for some incubations and accelerator programs, they always ask people to build an MVP, and most of the time they usually draw something like on a board. You use things like Airtable, tools like that, Notion. So I just wanted to know if that is like maybe standard across the world.
Again, it depends on the product. I mean, as far as software is concerned, I don't know whether there is any other way to do it. But if you have non-conventional, non-software products, like for example, you want to build something like a hardware product, or you want to build. There are examples of there is a person called Eric Ries who has written a book. He has said that you can build a MVP in 5 days.
Yeah.
Right. You can. So that is again not for software probably, but for non-conventional products. So what he's saying is basically that the product itself doesn't have to be complete. It can be, you can have mock-ups and you can have. For example, let me give you an example. For example, this is a very old example that happened in IBM. IBM wanted to bring out. I'm talking about. This is an example maybe 30 years old. IBM wanted to bring out a laptop, a computer that could actually record a voice or could follow a voice. So if I just speak into the laptop or the computer, it will actually start writing.
Yeah.
Right. So remember, it's 30 years back. Right. So what they did was a slight trick. They had a table and chair like this, and they had a screen at the back, and the person would come here and he would start dictating. Or sit here and he will dictate. And there will be a typist at the back with a keyboard, right? No, typist means there is a keyboard. And as soon as he talks over here, she's a fast typist. So she types whatever is there and it comes on the keyboard, on the screen. So the idea was not to trick anybody. The idea was to see whether people like the idea of actually having it is a testing, it's an MVP, right? So 10 people walked by and said, out of 10, maybe 5 said, okay, let me try it out. And they tried it out and it actually was working. So then IBM got this idea that, okay, if this is working for 5 out of 10 people, I'm just making up some numbers, then maybe it's a product that we can start working on. So that was the idea. And this is a very expensive product to work on. It takes a lot of money to build something like this in those 30 years back. Yeah. So like that, so the idea here is that MVPs, you don't need to, the first thing is that go and sit with a client or a customer or a prospect and find out what their feedback is. That is the most important thing. And then if you think that there is some good feedback coming back from the customer, then it is a good product. Another example I can give you is this happened recently. When I was in one of those pitch events, there was this young kid. He was probably 28, 29 years old. He has no background in pitching. He was doing pitching for the first time. And he was pitching an HR product. I can't talk about the product because it will be an NDA kind of issue. But basically what he did was that while he talked to 2,000 prospects himself personally, it was an HR product. And he talked to 2,000 prospects. And out of the 2,000 prospects, about 1,200 or 1,300 of them actually said that you make this product and we'll buy it from you. And we'll use it. You don't say buy it, we will use this product. So which means he had at that, before even he could start talking about the product, he had 1,400 signups. 1,400 signups means 1,400 customers, right? So that is gold. Right? If you go to a VC with that, saying that, okay, I don't have a product, but I have this 1,400 signups, saying that they are signed up to actually start using the product from me. Which investor will not give him money? So that's an example of an MVP without nothing. There's no code, not a single line of code was written over there.
Yeah.
It was an HR platform meant to be integrating so many different things around recruiting. That was basically the product.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can just understand from that we shouldn't complicate an MVP.
Exactly.
You should just test it in the simplest way possible, as long as you get the results that you need before you move on. You talked about Codify acquiring an Indian company and moving a significant amount of your code work to India. So you're working with remote developers. I'd just like to understand your experience working with remote developers, because we have a lot of developers here. Some of them would like to work remotely, some of them work remotely. And when it comes to building an MVP, because I'm just thinking about an MVP as something that needs constant communication between the person who needs the MVP, you who commissions the work of the MVP, and then also the developers that are building it. So I just want to understand what's the synergy that makes sure that you do the entire process efficiently.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, I personally am a believer in having the essential team sitting physically in one location together. And I believe that. But in the cases where we are given work to be done offshore, we can't transfer the team to the on-site site. So there are certain fixed processes that we would like to follow, and that we follow it very strictly. The first thing that we do is to make sure that everyone understands what has to be built. So the client gives the right specifications. The specifications are not right, we go back and forth till it is right. Then we sign off on the specifications, and then we kind of estimate the effort to be done and how long is it going to take. Normally, as he said, we don't take more than 4 to 6 weeks to bring out an MVP. So this 4 to 6 weeks is a very short time. So before even you do anything, your 4 weeks are gone, and then you have only 2 weeks more. So we have to be very clear as to what will be done on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. So we have short sprints where we have either 2 week sprints or 1 week sprints. But there is a daily stand-up, which takes not more than 5 or 10 minutes, or 5 or maybe less, to make sure that everybody knows what needs to be developed on that particular day. And then along with the sprints, it gets completed very fast. And all this is done remotely.
Yeah. So I would like to ask something. When you've built a successful MVP, what happens next? Does Codify provide any help after the MVP is successful for a client, or do you just move on from the client?
No, I mean, it is a slightly combination of both. I mean, we are not actually running away or anything like that. So when we develop anything for any client, be it an MVP or be it a regular product, there is normally a 1 month warranty period.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing that we do normally with clients is standard procedure. I mean, this is done with all the standard companies. Any company who doesn't do this, you'll have to be suspicious of the company. So what we are saying is that from day one, we ask the company on their account to open a GitHub account.
Yeah.
On day one, even before we start coding. So on every day that coding is done, the code is checked into that GitHub account.
Yeah.
That GitHub account is commonly shared by the client and by us. Why are we doing this? Because if for some reason tomorrow something happens to the company touch wood, we go bankrupt, or all of us die in the company, or whatever it is, the client should not suffer. So the client has the code of that particular day till that particular day, and he or she can take the code and start working with some other company. So that is the first thing, and so like this there are we do that. We do the warranty for 1 month. And normally what happens after an MVP? MVP is built for 2 reasons. One reason is you want to see whether the clients really like your product. So if there is a client buy-in, you know that the next step is to actually start building more features and going ahead with the building of the product. And the second reason why you build an MVP is to actually put this in front of some investors and say, hey, you know what, this is what we're building. Some clients have already signed up. Do you want to have a look at the product? And so you're pitching to investors also. So what happens after the MVP is that, and if neither of these happen, so for example, if a company has not done their homework well, or if they don't have clients signing up, or the clients don't like the product, or they don't have any signups, then of course, then there will be a long gap between them getting back to the drawing table and coming up with a different product. And we just don't know what to do. We'll just wait, or we'll wait to hear back from them. But if the product has been accepted and there are investors, then we immediately get to know, and they will come back to us and say, that they would want to go ahead and build the product more.
Yeah. So when a founder is commissioning an MVP, what are some of the more common, like the frustrating experiences that any developer can go through? And how, as Codify, how do you mitigate some of these frustrating experiences? For example, I would say, let me say someone wants to commission an MVP, but then they're very unsure about, what they want exactly. Or they keep changing. Today it's something else, the next day it's something else. I know for most developers here, I've been a tech founder, and I had a developer developing something for me, and it used to frustrate him because every morning I would wake up with a new brilliant idea or brilliant feature that I would want, which would sometimes lead him to, end what he has been doing, or just, make it redundant. So, but I just want to know, like, from a developer perspective, how do you mitigate some of these frustrating experiences that come with building MVPs?
Yeah, it's a very tricky question. I probably it's not a good question for a podcast. but earlier days when we were starting and we were doing work for the first time, we used to do everything. If some customer comes us and says, "You do this," we will do it for them. But now we have got a bit more gray hairs, and so we think that we have enough leverage to tell the customer, have you thought about this? Have you done this? Do you really want to do this? Can we have a phase 2? So we have a lot of ways in which we can tell the customer that, maybe not saying no on his face, but telling him nicely that, maybe this is not a good idea, but if you really want to do it, we'll do it. But that is there. And the second is, normally since it's a 6-week effort, we normally try to bring it into a fixed bid. Not in a fixed bid, we don't commit on the price, but we say that it will get over in 6 weeks. And if we have to include another additional developer, the cost may go up, but it will get finished in 6 weeks' time. So because of that, we do not like entrepreneurs coming and telling us that we want to add more features.
Yeah.
So that is what we call as a feature creep. So we try our best to put it aside, or we very diplomatically say, "Oh, this is a great feature, but we'll do it in phase 2." So we won't take it in the first MVP. So those kind of things are, as a services company, we have to do all that.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be my last question, and I'd like my co-host maybe to ask something, or someone from the audience to also ask something. But my last question would be around. My last question, I would say it would be around the strategies you've seen, the MVPs that you've built as Codify. And these MVPs were successful. By successful, I mean someone tested an MVP and they found that people actually like the product. And some of the startups that you've worked with, what did they do to successfully launch the product after building a very successful MVP? Now building the product, what are the key things that they did to be able to have that success after the MVP?
So, the natural progression after that is that they've got validation from the client. Mm-hmm. They know that whatever they have been doing so far has been on the right track, and so the next step is to go and try and sign up as many clients as they can,
okay,
and then go to a VC or a investor and tell them, "Hey, I have so many clients. My ARR has gone up. My ARR is doubling every 6 months or 1 year." So all these are factors which they can pitch into investors, and investors can actually, investors will start taking notice of them. And if they do this continuously, it's tough to get in, even in the Silicon Valley market, very, very tough to get funding. So they have to struggle, they have to get the funding. But I think the other important thing about MVPs is that it is not an end process. You're not building a product that can be launched. You're building just a skeleton of a product. It is basically a core product that is there. I can give you a very good example. I mean, many years, I mean, I think this was in 2018. I don't know how many of you know, but in California, we have a lot of wildfires. So there was a company that we started. We helped build their MVP. Their product was basically a very scientific product that based on the. So what happens during a wildfire is that people are required to evacuate from that area. They have to just run. They have to just take whatever they can, put it into a car, and they'll just get out of the place. And so before this product was launched, there was no scientific way to tell which area to evacuate first. But this product had a very clear scientific methodology around it, so they know exactly which direction the fire was going. So they looked at wind speed, they looked at the temperature, they looked at humidity, they looked at all those factors to predict which direction the fire is going. And so they would actually ask those people in that direction only to evacuate. And this was being sold to districts like counties. We call it counties over there. And so while they were actually just about completing the product and they had already shown it to a few counties, one of the counties had a very, very bad wildfire attack. And when a wildfire comes, it normally lasts for about 2 or 3 weeks, the severity, and people have to be evacuated for at least 10 or 15 days. So when this fire started, since they knew that the county knew that they had this product, they said, we don't care if the product is complete or not, just bring the product. Just come and sit in our office, the fire chief's office, and please let us use the product. And so they allowed them to use the product, and they told them that it's not going to be perfect. So they used the product, and guess what? While they were using the product, they actually saw more and more features coming in to the product. So the fire chief said, okay, now the fire is done. Now we want to call back all the people from each of the counties, each that they have been evacuated. But normally they would just tell everybody to go back. But now they had this product and they would say, okay, now from county, only the northernmost people come back or the southernmost. So this was a feature that they never thought about. So by using the MVP and by including the customer into it, they actually benefited because their product became more and more feature rich. So again, it's a long answer, I know, but I'm just saying that the MVP is not an end product. MVP is a midway product, or it's a trial balloon, what we say. So we are just putting it out there to see how many of the customers would like to have it.
Yeah. Hey, please, it deserves a round of applause. I don't know where you would be getting this kind of insights from if you had not come here. So we'd just like to open up to some questions, some remarks, some reactions to the conversation that has been going on. And I'll start with my co-host if he has anything to say.
Yeah, I have a lot. And, I don't know, since this is your first time in Africa, you know how hard it is to build a business in Africa. If it was hard in San Francisco, it's like 50 times harder to build it in Africa. But of course, we can share the lessons and the experiences. I know San Francisco is one of the places that, every entrepreneur, especially in tech, knows they can build a business that can scale. What is that we need to prepare until we get there? What is that process look like?
As a company or as a region?
As an ecosystem.
It's a long journey. I mean, it's San Francisco is Silicon Valley, not because something happened 2 days back or 3 days back. This journey started in maybe 1988 or 1990. And so the core reason why the place is so successful is because the most important reason being that it had 3 factors involved in it. So one factor is that it had very critical education institutions over there. So Stanford and Berkeley were one of the engineering institutes of the highest quality. So you had always people coming out of those places with a lot of skills and abilities and all those kind of things. And some people never even bothered to finish their courses, right? The Google guys and all that. So that is the first thing. The second thing is that education institutions, and then these guys actually brought out a lot of tech talent, and tech talent started coming out there. And the third factor was the money. And the money, there was a lot of investors who were ready to actually invest in these early stage startups. And actually, there is also a factor that I don't know whether you've heard of the semiconductor company called Fairchild. Fairchild was the earliest company, started in the 60s, that actually, it is from there that companies like Intel and then later Cisco and then later on, companies started coming out of these companies, founded out of people who came out of these companies. So there was already a very rich environment of, entrepreneurship plus technology background over there, which is why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. I mean, people have tried to replicate Silicon Valley in China and in India and it will never happen. It was very difficult to happen. But at the same time, if you so as they say, we say success breeds success. So as you get more and more rich people, nowadays anybody that is walking on the streets of Silicon Valley has $1 million in his pocket because they are coming out of Nvidia and Apple and all those companies. So that environment has to come. That environment, it's a tough thing to reach there. So I was today visiting the university here today. You guys should actually work more closely with the universities because this is a combined team effort. You can't do it by yourself. The developers can't do it by themselves. The investors can't do it by themselves. The university can't do it by themselves. You have to actually come together, make some really, really solid plans to actually help each other. I mean, it doesn't matter if out of this help, if one or two people kind of break out and have succeeded, it's good for you because if that person succeeds as a company, he will make a few millionaires and, it'll come back into Uganda, right? So this is a long effort and it has to have a very clear plan. And I'm actually, I don't know whether I should say this, but I'm disappointed that, a 100-year-old university, you're right next to a 100-year-old university. And you have nothing to show from there in terms of tech talent or where are all these graduates from this university? I don't know.
Yeah. It looks like that, but there are so many success.
No, I don't mean it in a bad manner but I'm just saying that unless there is a combined effort to bring everybody up,
absolutely,
it is not the fault of the university. It is not. It's the ecosystem itself has to help. I did my undergrad in India, and my university is actually one of the oldest universities in the country. We are pre-independence. India got independence in 1947. Our university was formed before that. One of the 3 or 4 universities over there. And we are so proud that our university has more than 6,000 of our alumni in the US. 6,000. In the Bay Area itself, we have 1,000 alumni. So if you just send a letter out to them saying that I want this, I want that, I want my son to get an interview over there, man, 5, 10, 15 people respond to it. Right. So that ecosystem has to be developed.
Absolutely.
We have to be proud of that ecosystem.
Nice. I mean, those are quite good insights. And it makes a lot of sense. I think it's just that also we don't celebrate our main founders, engineers, presidents, ministers, finance guys, because also the ecosystem means not everyone will be a tech entrepreneur, but of course there are different key players in different sectors that makes that a tech ecosystem. So you said, money also has to play a factor in building this ecosystem. And I'm curious, where did people in Silicon Valley get the money to invest in the initial startup? Because ideally, I don't believe that, Silicon Valley was all about tech. Where did that old money come from to invest in the tech ecosystem?
Yeah, so it's if you're in Silicon Valley or anywhere in the US, if somebody starts a company, the normal first round of funding comes from what we normally call as friends and family, right? So which means that you have friends and family who are rich, right? Who can give you. You can just close your eyes and say, okay, you take $10,000, you take $10,000, you take $5,000.
Yeah.
I know that this country is not yet there at that stage, but I'm just saying that is the source of funding for the first level. And this is not free money. This is not money given to them free of cost. I mean, we have this funding thing that money is given. This $10,000, for example, is given out as a loan against equity, right? So there are 3 or 4 conditions or 3 or 4 outcomes that if at the end of, say, 1 year, the company has gone bigger and they are taking off, then there's an option. At the end of 1 year, there is an option. Either way, there is an option for the person who was given 10,000 to actually take out his entire money with interest. So he can go to the founder and say, "No, I don't want to be with you anymore.
You liquidate
10,000 with interest."
Yeah.
Second, he has an option of not taking out the money, but converting all the money to equity. Right, that is the second option. The third option is to have anywhere in between. So you can say, okay, give me 50% back and 50% is equity. So this is actually, it is convertible. It's called a convertible debt. And that is a very commonly used instrument in Silicon Valley. But I understand over here, you have to have some similar system over here. Some group of people who can come together and say, okay, here is a fund for investing in good startups. Something like that. That's why I'm saying it's a group effort. You can't just, as a developer, you can't sit in your house and say, okay, I don't know how to do this. Investor can't say that. University can't say that. So this has to be a group effort.
Absolutely. So also the legal system have to support those initiatives.
Absolutely, 100%.
So my next question, and then I'll open for 2 or 3 questions if time allows, is around raising funds. We've seen so many companies, especially in Silicon Savannah, as we call it, the sub-Saharan Africa, and that's when they fail. It's like when most, I don't know how true this is, when most successful musician gets signed by big entertainment company, you stop hearing from them. I'm not so sure where the disconnect is, that when you raise this money, that's when you fail. And what actually happens? So the question then comes to, am I ready to raise money? Do I really even need to raise money? And if I raise money, what are those key indicators or milestones that I need to achieve to even be able to grow and either repay as a debt or liquidate some of that investment that is taken and continue to grow?
It's a very complex question, because I can sit in the next 2-3 hours and talk about it, but because it's a very complex question.
Yeah.
I mean, so raising money doesn't mean that you're stopping your company. Raising money means that you have come to a point where there is a validation, and the first funding is actually a validation. And then you have to actually, the founder will have a vision as to how his company has to proceed. So, and once you start raising money and once the company grows, raising money becomes constant. You just can't stop raising money unless and until you have actually reached such a, what we call as a hockey stick growth. Then you don't require any more money, then you can stop funding. Right. And the other thing is, the raising money part of it itself, when you raise your funding, is a very important thing. Because angels or VCs, when they actually give you money, you have to give a percentage of the company to them. So I was talking to some of the folks over here, and it is a common mistake that founders do, to actually go and approach a VC right at the beginning without even any revenues or customers or whatever it is. If you go and ask money from a VC, and if your product happens to be appealing to them, they might ask you for a lot of equity. So you're losing a lot of equity just because you're not doing the right work at the right time. Had you done all the right work at the right time and waited for another few months or a year to get the money, then your equity the equity that you give away will be very low. So if you start off your company with a very high equity being given, what is very high? Even 25% equity is very high. Because as soon as you get 25, your stock as a founder is diluted, right? And if you have 2 or 3 people as co-founders, then each of you has less than 50%. So you lose control on your company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just open for 2 questions from the audience. Please proceed to this mic, and then we'll be followed by David here. So just make a way for him, and you can use this mic.
Thank you. I'm Duncan from Ocean Technologies. I'm here to ask on behalf of the hardware designers here, because usually in such forums we have mostly software people and we ignore the hardware people. And I think our problem as Africa, before we go to the software, we should focus on the hardware, because there is quite a lot that we could achieve if we can build hardware. However, the biggest challenge is that I think we don't have any examples of successful hardware startups that can enable us to convince the people, for example, the government or maybe other private investors, that this can actually work. Because I'm speaking from experience, something I have been through. You have something, maybe an MVP, but the complexity of, for example, moving it to production scale is quite astronomical. And this person who had maybe picked interest looks at the cost and is like, because one person told me that no one has done this here in the country and it has worked. And like that, he backed out. He had the capacity financially and also the connections, but because of that fear, he backed out. And also the government still has, this mistrust. We don't have the trust between the private sector and the government that we can actually work together. So we are all looking at each other as, like with contempt. So the question is, how do we bridge this gap? How do we convince each other? Because I think for me that is the starting point. If we can't convince each other, the only option is, for example, if I want to make something similar to what ASML did, to sit and work for 30 years and get funding consistently to build the next EUV machine, I will have to leave the country, meaning that we keep going back to zero. This person leaves because there is no ecosystem and support. So maybe from experience, you could advise us on how we can give input or feedback to ourselves, first of all, and maybe the government and the other private companies here to have that kind of togetherness, to believe in experimentation, to even fund things that seem to have no positive outcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, this is this is a political question. I should answer it, but I can say something that see, there are certain from a startup perspective itself, there are points of view over here. I think the first thing especially being in America, and we normally don't depend on government at all. We don't like to talk about government. This is a private business. So we keep, of course, they can give us money if they want to, but we keep them out of our business. So I think that you should also follow the same process over here. Why would you want government the government to say, hey, you're a good boy, you're a good company? We don't want that. Without that, we know we are good. So we should do that. The second thing is that I think you should follow the market. If you have a good market for your hardware product over here, then you have to be adamant about succeeding in this market. But if you don't have a market over here, why are you being here? If you don't have a market over here, go to where the market is. If the market is in the US, try and go to US. Or if market is in some other country, go to some other country. But the idea is that if you don't have a market, then you are at the wrong place at the start itself. So even if government comes and helps you, then you will blame the government if you don't succeed. Right. So, I assume that will actually be the core of your answer, that the hardware, if it is a hardware product or any product for that matter, if you don't have a big enough market where you are, then you have to get out of that place. And the inverse also is true, that even before you get out of the place, try and test your product in the near local market. I have actually got calls from some customers and some founders in Europe. They say, hey, you are in Silicon Valley and we like what you write on LinkedIn. So how can we get into the Silicon Valley market? I said, please don't come here. If you are in wherever, Netherlands or Spain or whatever it is, try your product out in that market, in your neighborhood, in your district, in your city. And if it works over there, it works. Then at least you know how it works and how well it works or how well it does not work. You can have something else. But if you're sitting in Spain or Denmark or Portugal, and you're trying to do business in Silicon Valley, so much of money is being spent just by commuting and by worrying and by having people on the ground. And so it's a very logical thing. So sometimes when you start building a product, you forget about all the logic. And then you say, okay, whatever I am saying is good. So let's just, that is the common mistakes we can make.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ken, for those insights. And thank you, Wama, for inviting him over and moderating the session. My name is David Okwi, and I've built a number of MVPs that haven't seen the light of day, unfortunately. But thank you for the insights that you've shared in that area. So my question is, Uganda and so many African countries are still at that emerging stage, right? And so it's very hard for us to, for example, relate to a number of startups or companies in Silicon Valley, because that's a totally different market at a totally different maturity stage, right? Personally, I find it extremely hard to relate to and apply a lot of advice that comes from, say, the US or those mature markets. Instead, I seek to look at other emerging markets that are slightly at a higher stage than Uganda or Africa, but not as far as the US, like India a few years ago, and Far East, like Indonesia and Singapore and so forth. So I'd like to know what lessons can we here in Uganda, building for an emerging market where digitization hasn't really reached that far, what lessons can we learn from those markets there, right? Like Indonesia, for example, that we can use to apply here, or even India. I know India is a lot far, but a few years ago, say 10 years ago, digitization wasn't that far, right? So what lessons can we draw from those startups, if you know any, that we can use to model and run our startups here in emerging markets? My second question is around distribution, what you talked about, right? Why try to build for the US, yet you have a lot that you can build it for Africa or for Uganda? And an easier way to do that is really to collaborate with a company or a startup that has global presence, right? Like Uber or Airbnb and so forth. Are there opportunities where startups here in Africa or in Uganda can work with Silicon Valley companies to localize some of their product features, right? For example, one of the reasons why Uber has failed to compete against SafeBorder is because SafeBorder, which is a ride-hailing app, has a lot of local context and local knowledge, right? And so that's how they've been able to survive and beat this big giant company. So are there any opportunities, if you know any, where startups here that are struggling, instead of building and running their own distribution, can ride on an existing product, but then localize either a feature or, a business model or whatever for the local market? I think that would make sense for me. Yes, thank you very much.
Did you forget the first question?
No, I forgot where I am. Sorry, I'm kidding. So I think the answer to the first question was all about ecosystem. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. But the lessons that you get from all these environments that I've picked up is that there is an ecosystem, there is a conscious effort being done either by the government, and if you want the government to stay out of it, then the private stakeholders themselves have to actually make this effort to happen. And that is the only answer. I mean, the India startup ecosystem started off, I think, sometime about 10 or 12 years ago. India was supposed to be, just a back-end market for software development till maybe 2010. Normally, people used to say, okay, you are the software slaves of the world. You don't make any products. You don't do that. You don't do this. And suddenly, one fine morning, people. I remember from my college, youngsters started, leaving final year, refusing offers from Microsoft and starting their own company. So it is all a cycle. It all leads up to a particular thing based on how strong the ecosystem is. So if a young kid can just walk out of university and say, I want to do a startup, just imagine how much pressure he has from his parents not to do that. But he does that because he has a belief that he can do well. So I think that ecosystem is the answer to all this. I mean, unless there is a strong enough ecosystem to support each other, that I think is not going to happen. And the second question, actually, I have not understood. So meaning, you said something about localization and those kind of things, but But what exactly is your intent? What do you want to know?
So, if I got your question, what actually most people, even in Africa itself, so we have 54 countries. So you find Egypt things are really doing well. The ecosystem is really doing well. Tunisia, Morocco. You go down south, they're also doing well. You go in the west, Senegal, Ghana is doing well. Nigeria. You come to east, Kenya, Rwanda is doing fairly well. But you go to other countries, they're struggling because of various things that actually are local to that community. And some of things actually do not really make sense. For instance, in Silicon Valley, someone can give you $1 million and take a risk. It's like, if we lose that, we lose it, right? But let's try it. Someone giving you, I don't know, $1 million UGX here, 3 billion, right? UGX. I'm from Kenya, so I'm a bit having a hard time to convert. It's really hard because
You need a lot of fingers.
yeah, it's a lot of money, which means even for that person, it means between life and death. So if they can't take that risk. So yes, someone might say, okay, let's take a risk with $1 million. Someone thinks about $1 million actually in Uganda. There's so many things that I can do. I can get into real estate and I'll never be the same again. I can get into maybe rearing Ankole cattle, which actually I can see them and count them and maybe sell them when they mature, and that is safe. But you're building a software that I can't see. You're trying a hardware that actually might fail tomorrow and I cannot really see the value. So that context is very important in even building that tech ecosystem, to an extent that I feel also, as much as this is concerned, what Founders Launch is trying to do is very important, because if everyone brings the context, it's really important to hear different people's story and also to know that you're not alone in this journey. What also Africa is doing with the summit, moving from one country to the other, is also to tell guys, we can do this together. Africa Talking has been here for 15 years. We are bootstrapped, we have raised funds, we have seen all these challenges. Now, can we do it again together with our lessons? So I don't know what kind of input you'd have on comparing the ecosystem that is almost close to Uganda economy and growing that, so that at least the entrepreneurs and founders who are in this room can actually find tangible things that they can even implement starting tomorrow, next month, and going forward.
Yeah, so I think it all goes back to the ecosystem that we've talked about.
Yep.
But I just wanted to say this, that, right now, because of all these things that have happened in all these different markets, US and India and Europe and all that, the amount of tools that are available have actually become more and more available, not just to these regions, but they have become available globally. Right. So this is something that I wanted to leave you guys with, saying that there are more and more investors who are now ready to take risks across geographies. And there are links, there are platforms, there are links. So there is a platform that is started by a VC who has been a VC for almost 30 years. And he was about to retire when somebody said, you retire, then where does all the knowledge go? Yeah. So he was a very practical and a very sweet guy. So he, for the last 2 years, he was building a platform where it's like a marketplace where you have any startup founder can go there, any investor. There are many investors there, many startups over there, and there are many service providers over there as well. Could be any kind of service provider. And so here you have an opportunity as a startup. You can be anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Like, is it Product Hunt?
No, it is Scale Upstream.
Oh, okay.
And that person actually, Gary Jinks, is a legend over there, and he has number of investments in Africa. So actually, it is not that bad. So but the only warning I can give you is that please don't go unprepared into these kind of things, because whatever little chance you have to succeed will go away. So you have to actually start building an ecosystem where you help each other. As somebody was saying over here, we have pitching events almost every day in the valley. Yeah. So at least have one pitch event once a week. You're a founders group. I think you should help each other by actually getting some investors or getting some some wise guys to come and sit on these pitching events. And, it is a pitch practice. So you practice how to pitch. There are a lot of ways in which you can do the practice. You can look at YouTube videos, or you can talk to us, or you can do whatever you can do. But these are all things that actually have to do to increase the level of, quality of the companies that are seeking for funding. Because funding is very tough. I mean, you can make a mistake. Any experienced company themselves make mistakes. Then you forget about the lesser experienced companies. So I think there are a lot of good things happening, and there are a lot of work that has to be done in order to catch up and be at that level.
Thank you so much. I'll give this. We might not take another question, but I'll give him a chance to give a parting shot, and we conclude.
Yeah, so just a small reference to what David asked about context. When he said Jumia came to Uganda, Jumia has money, the technical know-how, obviously, in other ecosystems. And then it came to Uganda, and they battled safe border that was built from here, and it didn't really work out for them. It reminds me of something. So I used to love e-commerce a lot. I think I searched about anything e-commerce in Latin America, in India, in China, in Silicon Valley, and I had built like an encyclopedia about e-commerce. So one day I realized, I looked at Amazon, how Amazon grew, and I saw Amazon became, a $1 trillion company. I looked at the e-commerce equivalent of Amazon in Latin America is called Mercado Libre. It's an Argentine company. It's like the biggest e-commerce platform in Latin America. I looked at how Mercado Libre grew, and I saw it had become, a $1 billion company. I did the same. I saw Flipkart, and I saw, Flipkart was acquired for billions of dollars. And when I looked at how all these companies grew, at the time it took them to grow, I started to think, okay, Jumia is the next. So I got my money that I made from crypto and put it in Jumia stock. And it has never recovered. But it just shows that the context from Latin America, the context from, Southeast Asia, Silicon Valley may not truly apply to some ecosystems. So at least it's very important for you to understand the market that you're dealing with. Just that would be my parting shot. But I just thank all of you for coming.
So you can give a parting shot?
Right. Thanks a lot for having me here. Thanks a lot for attending this event. And I know it's startup by itself is a very, very, very tough journey. And when you have that tough journey with more hurdles in it, it's going to be tougher. But I'm just saying that you have to, the operating word in all the startup environments is you have to hustle. I mean, hustle, you know what hustle means, right? Keep fighting. So keep fighting.
Thank you so much. Until next time, this was Founders Launch Uganda podcast in collaboration with Africa's Talking and Impact Masters. For those who want to see these podcasts afterwards, you'll find it on Impact Masters YouTube channel and any other podcast channel, including iHeartRadio. And you can also find it on Retold Podcast YouTube channel, Africa's Talking, and any other podcast publishing channel. Until next time, my name is Michael Kimathi. Thank you so much.